They say legends are born in gold, but sometimes the greatest treasures are struck in copper. Imagine this: a single Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin from the Denver Mint, dated 1951, slipping unnoticed through the hands of millions of Americans. A coin so ordinary, it was nearly invisible. Yet decades later, that same humble piece of copper would surface again, whispered about in collectors' circles, rumored to command a market value of over $822,000, a 1-cent coin. Worth nearly $1 million, but how? That's the question that has haunted numismatists for generations, a question that pulls us into one of the most fascinating corners of American coinage: history. The story begins in the aftermath of World War II. America was booming. Factories were roaring back to life, the population was surging, and coins were being minted at a breathtaking pace. In 1951 alone, over 625 million Lincoln 1-cent coins poured out of the Denver Mint. Each bore the iconic portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the obverse, his thoughtful gaze, his rugged jawline, and the faint impression of "In God We Trust." On the reverse, the familiar wheat stalks framed the words 1 cent, symbolizing growth, labor, and the promise of a thriving post-war America. To the average American, it was just another penny. But to the trained eye, the collector, the investor, the dreamer, not all copper is created equal. Now, here's where the mystery deepens. Among those hundreds of millions of coins, a handful, and perhaps fewer than a dozen, emerged with anomalies so subtle they escaped notice for decades. Some bore minute doubling on the date. Others displayed misaligned dies, where the Denver D mint mark seemed to drift just a fraction out of place. A few were struck on foreign bronze planchets, blanks intended for coins of other nations that somehow found their way into the presses of the U.S. Mint. And in rare cases, the combination of these small errors produced coins that collectors today describe in reverent tones: the perfect storm of rarity, condition, and historical resonance. But rarity alone doesn't create value. There's something deeper, a psychology, an invisible current that moves through every collector's heart. Think about it. What drives someone to spend $800,000 on a 1-cent coin? It isn't just metal content. It isn't even just rarity. It's connection to a moment in American history, to a shared nostalgia for the world our grandparents lived in, to the idea that something ordinary can carry extraordinary meaning. The Lincoln 1-cent coin represents stability, humility, and endurance, qualities Americans admire, especially in uncertain times. And when a coin like the 1951 D-era piece surfaces, it doesn't just attract buyers, it attracts believers. Let's talk about market psychology for a moment. In the world of numismatics, value is not static. It's emotional, cyclical, alive. When silver and gold prices rise, attention shifts toward precious metal coins. But when the economy trembles, collectors seek refuge in numismatic history, tangible artifacts that hold stories no inflation can erase. That's when copper coins, especially early Lincoln cents, begin to shine. In recent years, private auctions have seen jaw-dropping results for mid-century Lincoln 1-cent coins in pristine condition. Coins graded MS67 red or higher with flawless luster and sharp strikes have set records previously thought impossible. And then, out of nowhere, came whispers of a 1951 D Lincoln cent crossing the auction block for over $822,000. Was it a myth? A private sale? A one-of-a-kind error coin kept hidden for generations? The details are cloaked in mystery, but the impact was immediate. Collectors began scouring their old jars, inheritance boxes, and safe deposit holdings. Dealers reported surges of interest in early 1950s Denver issues. Online markets exploded with listings, each promising the next million-dollar penny. Here's the truth: not every 1951 D is valuable. Most are worth face value, maybe a few cents if they're worn. But when you find one that tells a different story, the game changes. Imagine a coin struck with a slightly off-center die, enough to shift Lincoln's profile or distort the mint mark. Imagine one preserved untouched, its surface gleaming with the original mint red. sealed away in an old cigar box since the Eisenhower era. Now combine that rarity with a certified grade from a top-tier service, the kind of grade that makes seasoned investors pause mid-conversation. That's when you enter the realm of 5- and 6-figure valuations. And if that coin carries a documented minting anomaly, even better, a verified transitional plancher, you've crossed into numismatic legend. There's a certain poetry in all of this. Coins are storytellers made of metal. They travel through decades, through pockets, wars, and economies, absorbing the fingerprints of history. When you hold a coin from 1951, you're holding a moment when America was redefining itself, when cars had fins, televisions flickered in living rooms, and children could still buy candy for a single cent. It's easy to forget that every coin you touch has lived a life. Some were dropped in subway grates, some passed through the hands of soldiers or factory workers, and some, the lucky few, were tucked away, waiting for someone like you to recognize their hidden worth. But here's the twist most collectors overlook. Value isn't just in the coin, it's in timing. The coin market, like any market, breathes. It expands and contracts. Decades ago, few cared about Lincoln cents. Then came the boom of the 1980s, when the first great grading services emerged and transparency entered the market. Prices soared. Then they cooled. Then they soared again. Now, in our current era, with digital auctions, social media attention, and a renewed hunger for tangible wealth, the stage is set once more for extraordinary discoveries. A single high grade, error-verified 1951D could ignite headlines again, not just because of what it's worth, but because of what it represents, the American dream in miniature. The idea that something overlooked, forgotten, or dismissed could one day change a life. Let's pause for a question. When was the last time you checked your own coin jar? Inside, there might be a few Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coins from the 1940s, the 1950s, maybe one with a D mint mark beneath the date. You might think it's worth nothing, but remember, every million-dollar discovery started with someone who looked twice. Numismatics, at its core, isn't just about collecting metal, it's about preserving legacy. Each coin is a microcosm of its era, its design, its imperfections, its intent. When you study them long enough, you realize that the mint wasn't merely striking currency. It was striking identity. The Denver Mint, in particular, had a distinct character in the mid-20th century. It was efficient, bold, and known for experimenting with minting techniques to keep pace with rising demand. But speed has its price. Occasionally, dies would misalign, planchers would vary slightly in composition, and minute mechanical slips would create anomalies that, decades later, become objects of fascination and fortune. That's how the 1951D mystery was born, through a quiet, human imperfection that slipped past inspection, only to become a symbol of perfection in the eyes of collectors. The irony is that many of the world's most valuable coins were never intended to exist. A doubled die, an off-metal strike, a misplaced mint mark. Mistakes that once embarrassed the mint now fuel multi-million-dollar markets. There's something deeply human in that transformation. The idea that flaws can become masterpieces, that imperfection itself can become priceless. Perhaps that's why collectors often describe their passion not as a hobby, but as a calling. Because they're not just searching for coins. They're searching for meaning. So what should you do if you stumble across a 1951D Lincoln 1-cent coin? First, resist the temptation to clean it. A single touch of polish can erase thousands of dollars in potential value. Second, study it carefully under magnification. Look at the D mint mark. Is it misaligned? Is there doubling on the digits of the date? Is the color original? A bright, deep red that glows like a new penny under light? If you see any of these signs, it's time to submit the coin for professional grading. A slabbed, certified coin carries legitimacy. And in today's market, legitimacy is currency. Collectors pay for certainty. Investors pay for story. A graded, error-attributed 1951D has both. And yet, perhaps the most inspiring part of this story is not the money, but the metaphor. The 1951D Lincoln 1-cent coin reminds us that greatness often hides in plain sight. That in a world obsessed with instant success, quiet persistence, like copper enduring the test of time, still holds immense power. Every time a rare penny sells for hundreds of thousands of dollars, it sends a subtle message to anyone who listens. Value is not defined by appearance, but by history, authenticity, and discovery. There's an old saying among seasoned numismatists: you don't find the coin finds you. Maybe that's true. Maybe the coins we're meant to discover, the ones destined to change our lives, are already in our possession, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. So tonight, when the world grows quiet and the hum of daily life fades, take out that old coin jar. Turn the coins over in your hand. Look closer. You might just be holding a tiny piece of forgotten American history, a coin struck in 1951 in the heart of Denver. That carries the same promise it did the day it was minted, that even the smallest things can become monuments to legacy. And who knows? Maybe your next discovery won't just be worth a fortune. It might rewrite your own story. You're sorting through a small tin box of old coins, maybe something that once belonged to your grandfather. Among the dull copper tones, one piece catches your eye, a 1952 Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin, no mint mark beneath the date. Ordinary at first glance. Yet this single coin, if it happens to be the right one, could be worth more than a house in the suburbs. Over $800,000. Yes, you heard that right. A simple 1-cent piece from 1952, potentially valued at $817,000. And here's the haunting question that pulls every collector closer. What makes one coin, struck in the millions, suddenly become a national treasure while the rest remain pocket change? The 1952 Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin, struck in Philadelphia without a mint mark, seems deceptively simple. Coppery red, just over 3 grams in weight, and carrying that familiar image of Lincoln in quiet contemplation. But in the numismatic world, simplicity can be camouflage. Beneath that humble surface lies a series of mysteries, errors, die varieties, and minting quirks that can transform the ordinary into the extraordinary. Let's rewind history for a moment, back to the early 1950s. America was booming. The war was over. Optimism filled the air, and pennies clinked through soda fountains and jukeboxes. The U.S. Mint was producing billions of coins, churning out Lincoln cents with relentless precision. Yet hidden within those billions, a few anomalies escaped the press, tiny imperfections that would one day become million-dollar marvels. One such anomaly is rumored to exist among the 1952 no mint mark Lincoln cents. Some say it's a rare double-die obverse, where the design was accidentally struck twice, leaving subtle ghost-like echoes around Lincoln's face, or the inscriptions, "In God We Trust." Others whisper about experimental planchets, coins struck on metal, blanks that weren't pure copper but early, test alloys for later compositions. If authenticated, these microscopic differences could turn a forgotten cent into a legendary piece of American numismatic history. Here's what fascinates investors and collectors alike. The value of rare coins doesn't move in a straight line. It rises and falls with emotion, curiosity, nostalgia, and above all, scarcity. A common Lincoln cent might be worth 1 cent forever, but a coin proven to be 1 in 10 or 1 in 50 known survivors lives in a different universe entirely. When a verified 1952 no mint mark coin with a striking error appeared at auction, its final hammer price shocked even seasoned collectors, over $800,000. The reason wasn't just rarity, it was story. Every valuable coin tells a story about America itself. The 1952 Lincoln cent speaks of post-war transition, the mint's experiments with efficiency, and the unintended beauty that emerges when machines make mistakes. Collectors don't just buy metal. They buy the narrative, the tangible connection between history and chance. But here's a thought worth pausing on. How many of these coins still hide in plain sight? In attics, in cigar boxes, in forgotten piggy banks? It's estimated that less than a fraction of 1% of all Lincoln cents from that era have been closely examined by professional graders. That means the vast majority remain unsearched, their secrets untouched for decades. The next 6-figure cent could be lying quietly in a desk drawer right now, waiting for the right set of eyes. This is what drives the psychology of collectors. It's not greed, it's possibility. The thrill of being the one who discovers what others overlooked. The romance of holding something that bridges generations. The 1952 Lincoln cent, especially without a mint mark, embodies that dream perfectly. Here's an interesting twist most don't know. The Philadelphia Mint, the one that didn't mark its coins, was actually the oldest and most prolific in the nation. Its lack of a mint mark was not an error but tradition. Yet, that very absence fuels the mystique. When collectors see no mint mark, their pulse quickens, their imagination sparks. Because it means the coin's origin must be decoded not by letters, but by details, the shape of a numeral, the tilt of a letter, the tone of the metal itself. Now, imagine an investor or collector spotting a faint doubling on the 1952 digits, or a die crack running subtly across Lincoln's shoulder. These minor clues, often invisible to the naked eye, can mean the difference between a coin worth a cent and one commanding a fortune. The 1952 double die obverse, for instance, if confirmed authentic and preserved in mint state red condition, could be one of fewer than 5 known examples. The last recorded auction for a comparable piece surpassed $800,000, with private sales rumored even higher. Pause for a moment and think about that. A cent, literally 1 cent, transformed into a nearly $1 million artifact. That kind of alchemy doesn't just excite investors, it inspires them. Because coins, unlike digital assets or speculative stocks, are tangible history. You can hold them, feel their texture, see the oxidation that time itself has painted upon them. Each one whispers stories of who held it, where it traveled, what it survived, and for serious numismatists, that human connection is priceless. Yet there's another layer, one that most people overlook. Rare coin values are not static numbers printed in a guidebook. They're reflections of trust, legacy, and the ever-changing market of human fascination. When economic uncertainty rises, collectors turn toward tangible wealth, metals, artifacts, things that cannot vanish in a server crash. That's why the past decade has seen a resurgence in demand for high-grade Lincoln cents, Buffalo nickels, and Morgan silver dollars. In that wave, the 1952 Lincoln cent stands as a quiet giant, a sleeper coin whose rarity keeps revealing itself in whispers. What makes this particular year so emotionally powerful? Perhaps it's because 1952 sits at a crossroads, post-war prosperity, Cold War anxiety, and a national yearning for permanence. Lincoln's face on that coin symbolized endurance, integrity, and the hope that America's foundation would hold firm. Owning such a coin isn't merely financial, it's emotional. It's a bridge between eras, between values that defined our grandparents and the legacies we build today. Now, let's address the question everyone asks when a story like this emerges. How can I tell if my 1952 Lincoln cent is the rare one? First, inspect the date under magnification. True double die examples show distinct overlapping impressions, especially visible on the 1 and the 9. The word liberty may also appear doubled, almost as if it's vibrating. Next, observe the color. A full red luster, uncirculated, suggests mint state preservation, essential for high valuation. Finally, absence of a mint mark confirms Philadelphia origin. But even with these signs, authentication is essential. Many hopeful collectors have mistaken machine doubling or surface wear for genuine die errors. The only way to confirm is through professional grading services, where experts, armed with microscopes and decades of experience, determine authenticity, grade, and provenance. It's a process both scientific and poetic, because when the verdict returns as genuine rare die variety, the coin's destiny changes forever. Still, beyond the facts and figures, there's something deeply human about the pursuit itself. Coin collecting is, in essence, a dialogue with time. It teaches patience, humility, and respect for history. The 1952 Lincoln cent, especially those without a mint mark, reminds us that greatness doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, waiting decades for someone curious enough to look closer. It's that same curiosity that has fueled entire fortunes. Some of the most successful investors in numismatics began with a single old coin found in a change jar. They learned to see what others ignored: minting errors, rarity scales, die clashes, small but vital differences that separate treasure from trinket. Consider this. In 1952, a 1-cent coin could buy a stick of gum. Today, the right one could buy a fleet of luxury cars or a retirement home by the coast. The irony isn't lost on collectors. In a world obsessed with speed and technology, the idea that a small copper coin could quietly appreciate in value for 70 years is a poetic reminder that time itself can be an ally if you know where to look. And that's why serious collectors don't just buy coins, they curate legacies. Each acquisition is a seed planted for future generations, a tangible piece of American story that can be passed down, held, admired, and wondered over. So as you listen to this, maybe you're remembering that box of coins in your attic or that drawer where your father's old collection sleeps untouched. What if one of those is your hidden gem? What if, nestled among the ordinary, lies your own 1952 Philadelphia-struck Lincoln cent waiting for its rediscovery? History rewards the curious. Check every date, every mint mark, or lack thereof. Handle each coin with care and with imagination, because behind every great discovery is someone who dared to look twice. In the grand theater of American coinage, the 1952 no-mint mark Lincoln 1 cent stands as a testament to the magic of imperfection. It reminds us that mistakes, tiny, unintentional deviations from perfection, can sometimes create the most enduring value. Whether you're an investor searching for stability, a collector chasing legacy, or simply someone enchanted by history's hidden corners, remember this: the next million-dollar coin isn't always buried deep underground. Sometimes it's right there in the palm of your hand, and if you ever find yourself holding that unassuming 1952 Lincoln cent, take a closer look, because 1 cent, under the right light, can reveal the wealth of a lifetime. Back in the mid-1950s, America was on the edge of transformation. The Korean War had just ended, Elvis Presley was beginning to shake the airwaves, and a nation rebuilding its prosperity was unknowingly minting its own hidden fortunes, right there in its pocket change. The Denver Mint, busy as ever, produced more than 250 million of these Lincoln cents that year. To the naked eye, each one looked the same: a smooth, reddish copper tone with Abraham Lincoln's calm, stoic gaze facing right. Yet, as collectors know, no two coins are ever truly identical. Within that sea of copper, a few coins emerged slightly different, barely visible errors, microscopic imperfections. But in the world of numismatics, those flaws are not defects. They are signatures of rarity. Before we dive into why a 1954 Lincoln 1 cent could be worth hundreds of thousands, let's pause on one question. What makes a simple penny priceless? It's not just age, not just metal. It's the combination of history, scarcity, and human story. Every coin tells a story of the hands that struck it, the mistakes that shaped it, and the few that escaped the melting pots of time. And for the 1954 that story begins in a year when minting technology was precise but not yet perfect. The Denver Mint's machinery occasionally produced double dies, misstrikes, and off-center strikes, each one a silent anomaly. Among collectors, these are whispered legends. The double die obverse, where Lincoln's portrait or the date shows a subtle shadowing effect, has turned ordinary cents into museum pieces. But for 1954 the magic lies in the details of its mint mark and die condition. Some examples show faint repunching, the D appearing doubled or slightly misaligned, suggesting a hand-touched adjustment during minting. Others show abnormally sharp luster or an almost mirror-like surface, reminiscent of early proof strikes, though never officially designated as such. These small quirks, when preserved in perfect condition, mint state 67 or higher, become the kind of treasure that transforms a simple collector into a legend. Now here's where it gets interesting. In recent years, high-grade specimens of the 1954 Lincoln cent have shattered expectations. A few graded by top-tier certification agencies like PCGS or NGC have commanded staggering prices, over $800,000. in private sales and major auction houses. How? Can a 1-cent coin reach such astronomical value? It's about survival. Of the hundreds of millions produced, almost everyone was spent, scratched, pocket-worn, or lost. Only a fraction survived the decades in pristine condition, untouched, uncirculated, and unblemished by time. That means the true gems, the coins that retain that fiery copper brilliance, that untouched mint luster, are not just rare. They're nearly mythical. Collectors who understand this don't just see metal. They see a frozen moment in American history, a piece of 1954 preserved in perfection. But rarity alone isn't enough to spark an $811,000 sale. There's another layer: desire. Coin collectors operate on emotion as much as logic. They chase rarity, yes, but they also chase the story, the thrill of discovery, the hope that something ordinary could hide something extraordinary. And few coins embody that emotion like the Lincoln 1 cent. Since its debut in 1909, it has become more than a coin. It's a piece of Americana. Generations have touched it, saved it, tossed it in fountains, pressed it into wishes. So when one of those familiar little coins suddenly reveals itself as a once-in-a-century rarity, it ignites something primal. It's nostalgia and ambition colliding. Picture this scene: an estate auction in the Midwest. Boxes of old currency laid out, mostly common. An elderly man's lifelong collection, modest, unassuming. Then, tucked between two rolls of worn wheat cents, a single 1954 D shines differently under the light. The auctioneer pauses. A whisper travels through the room, a rumor that this one might be special. When it finally hits the block, bidding starts slow. A few hundred, then 1,000, then 5. Moments later, the energy shifts. Experts recognize the sheen, the flawless fields, the immaculate strike. The coin climbs past $100,000, then $300,000, then $500,000. When the gavel finally falls, $811,000, a stunned silence. And in that silence, a truth emerges. The value of history is never truly lost, only waiting to be rediscovered. Now, some may ask, how do you even know if your coin is special? It begins with curiosity and ends with knowledge. If you hold a 1954 D Lincoln 1 cent, inspect it carefully. The D mint mark under the date should be crisp, not blurry. But if you notice doubling, faint repunching, or unusually sharp details in Lincoln's hair and coat, it could be worth deeper examination. Look at the color. A bright red or red-brown tone means better preservation. Check the coin's surfaces under light. If it still glows with that original mint brilliance, you may have something valuable. And then, the most crucial step: certification. Professional grading agencies are the gatekeepers of trust in this world. A high-grade certification, MS-66, MS-67, or higher, transforms a curious find into a verified treasure. Of course, there's more to collecting than just value. True numismatists know that coins are like mirrors. They reflect the era that created them. In 1954, America was forging its post-war identity. The Lincoln cent represented not just currency, but continuity, a reminder of integrity, labor, and the enduring image of a man who held the Union together. To hold a flawless 1954 D cent is to hold a slice of that optimism, minted at a time when the nation believed the future was bright, and every penny mattered. Perhaps that's why so many collectors are drawn to this coin. It's not just the rarity. It's the symbolism. It reminds us that greatness often hides in the smallest places. Here's another thought to ponder. If the Denver mint workers of 1954 had known that one of their routine strikes would one day sell for nearly $1 million, would they have believed it? Probably not. And yet that's the paradox of numismatics. Value revealed only by time. What seems ordinary today could be tomorrow's masterpiece. That's why modern collectors are looking back, scouring coin rolls, estate sales, and inherited boxes. The market for Lincoln cents, particularly from the 1950s, has been quietly accelerating. High-grade wheat cents, once overlooked, now command fierce bidding wars. Because in an uncertain world, tangible history feels safer than speculation. A well-preserved coin doesn't crash like a stock. It endures quietly, steadily, beautifully. But let's add a word of caution, and perhaps a dose of mystery. Not every coin labeled rare truly is. Some are artificially altered, polished, or damaged to mimic rarity. Experienced collectors know how to see past the shine. They seek authenticity over appearance. That's where legacy investors stand apart from hobbyists. They don't chase trends, they chase truth. The truth that a genuine 1954D in pristine, uncirculated condition, verified by expert graders, stands among the most coveted of Lincoln series coins. And when such a coin emerges, when the copper glows as if it were struck yesterday, when Lincoln's features appear almost sculptural in depth, you're not just looking at a penny anymore. You're looking at art. So what lesson does this tiny copper treasure teach us? That opportunity often hides in plain sight. That patience, the quiet, meticulous patience of a collector, can uncover what history forgot. In the world of numismatics, those who look closest often gain the most. Because every coin has two sides, the metal and the meaning. One side reflects a man's profile, the other, a nation's ideals. And in between, the story of how something worth 1 cent became a symbol of million-dollar value. Not just in dollars, but in wonder. Somewhere out there, perhaps in a forgotten jar or a grandfather's drawer, another 1954D Lincoln cent lies waiting. Its edges sharp, its shine untarnished, its secret still intact. Maybe it's yours, maybe not. But if you ever come across one, pause for a moment before spending it, before dismissing it as just another relic, because history has a strange sense of humor. It hides its treasures where we least expect them, and sometimes the next great American fortune isn't locked in a vault. It's resting quietly in your own pocket. So the next time you sift through old coins, when that familiar reddish glint catches your eye, remember this story. Remember the year 1954, remember the D beneath the date. And remember that one of those small, unassuming pieces of copper once stunned the world with a value that defied logic, $811,000 for a symbol of persistence, patience, and the American dream. Because in the end, it's not just about finding a rare coin. It's about finding the reminder that greatness often begins small, and only those who look closely will ever see it. Because in 1958, at the Denver Mint, a mystery was struck into the heart of American coinage. A mystery so rare that only a handful of collectors have ever seen it with their own eyes. And one that turned a single Abraham Lincoln 1-cent coin into an artifact valued at over $804,000. So, what makes a humble copper cent, something millions once carried in their pockets, worth nearly $1 million today? Let's travel back to a time when America was booming, and the sound of presses at the Denver Mint echoed like a heartbeat of the nation's prosperity. The year was 1958. Dwight D. Eisenhower was president. The post-war economy was surging. Americans were buying homes, cars, and televisions, symbols of a new modern life. But in the midst of that optimism, a small batch of Lincoln cents left the Denver Mint carrying a hidden imperfection, or perhaps perfection of a very different kind. To most, these coins looked ordinary. The same iconic design that sculptor Victor David Brenner had introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. But deep within the die, the metal stamp used to strike each coin, something extraordinary occurred, a doubling, a faint yet unmistakable doubling of the date and the inscriptions. The 1958 appeared ever so slightly repeated. The letters in Liberty and In God We Trust showing ghost-like shadows, an echo of the first strike. It wasn't a manufacturing flaw. It was a momentary glitch in precision, a tiny mechanical miracle born from human imperfection. That's what collectors now call a doubled die, one of the most elusive and intoxicating errors in U.S. coinage. And here's the kicker. Only 3 examples of the 1958 double-die Lincoln 1-cent coin are known to exist. 3, not 3,000, not 300. Just 3. That scarcity alone makes it one of the rarest modern-era cents ever produced. But rarity alone doesn't create obsession, story does. Every serious numismatist knows this. The value of a coin isn't just in its metal, but in its mystery. It's in the whisper that maybe, just maybe, there's another one still out there, in a forgotten roll, a dusty collection, or a box of childhood savings sitting untouched in an attic. Think about that for a moment. A single oversight in a minting process 67 years ago could transform your next handful of pocket change into a life-altering discovery. That's the quiet thrill that drives collectors, not just the chase for profit, but the pursuit of meaning. Every rare coin connects us to a moment in history, to the craftsman who engraved it, to the hands that passed it through time. And in the case of the 1958 Denver minted double-die Lincoln cent, the connection runs even deeper, because for decades, it was believed no such error could have existed that year. You see, by 1958, the U.S. Mint had tightened its quality controls. The great double-die varieties of earlier years, like the famous 1955 Philadelphia cent, had become cautionary tales. Inspectors were vigilant, machines recalibrated, procedures refined. So when a few examples of the 1958 D double-die were discovered, the numismatic world was stunned. How could a mistake so glaring have escaped unnoticed? Some experts speculate it was the result of a worn master hub that slipped through inspection. Others whisper that a small number may have been intentionally released, perhaps even smuggled out by someone within the mint itself. No one truly knows. And that uncertainty, that lingering question, is part of what makes the 1958 D Lincoln cent one of the most captivating mysteries in American coin collecting. When one of these coins surfaced at auction, the world took notice. Collectors watched in silence as the bidding climbed higher, surpassing expectations, breaking psychological barriers. $100,000, $300,000. Then, over $800,000 for a single copper cent. To the untrained eye, it might seem absurd. But to those who understand the language of rarity, that number tells a different story, one of human fascination, scarcity, and legacy. Because when a coin like this changes hands, it's not merely a transaction, it's a transfer of history. It's a recognition that something as small as a cent can carry within it the weight of time, art, and national identity. And perhaps that's the most beautiful paradox of all, the smallest coin of American currency, holding one of the greatest values. But let's pause here for a moment. Ask yourself, how many times have you looked at a coin and dismissed it as ordinary? How many treasures have passed through your hands unnoticed? Collectors know that the line between the mundane and the magnificent can be paper thin. What separates a 1-cent coin worth face value from one worth nearly $1 million is often invisible to the naked eye. A faint doubling, a mint mark misplaced, a variation in color or luster. That's why the true collector doesn't just see coins. They study them. They trace the lineage of each mint mark, the story behind each year. They feel the emotional pulse that runs through the metal, a connection to every hand it's passed through since the moment it was struck. And they understand something that casual observers rarely do. That collecting is not merely about possession. It's about preservation. It's about keeping alive the subtle artistry of America's past. Now, here's a detail that even seasoned investors find fascinating. The Denver Mint struck over 800 million Lincoln cents in 1958. Yet, out of all those, only 3 with this particular double die are confirmed. That's a ratio so small it's almost mathematically impossible. This means that the odds of one existing in your collection, however remote, are not zero, and that sliver of possibility is what fuels the hunt. Across the country, collectors still sift through rolls of old wheat-backed Lincoln cents, their fingers stained copper red, hearts racing with anticipation. It's not just about finding wealth. It's about finding a story worth telling, a secret the mint never intended to release. Because in the end, every coin has 2 sides, the face we see and the story we uncover. There's another layer to this narrative, one that touches on legacy and timing. Numismatic markets are like tides. They rise and fall with waves of emotion, history, and scarcity. The 1958 D double die has proven something extraordinary, that coins from the mid-20th century can appreciate faster than many traditional Investments. As collectors age and new, generations enter the hobby. Demand for well-documented, high-grade rarities continues to climb. Wealth isn't just moving. It's migrating into tangible history. Gold and silver may hedge inflation, but rare coins carry something more profound: provenance. A story that cannot be replicated, duplicated, or forged without history itself. That's why elite collectors, the quiet millionaires and family legacy builders, are not just buying coins. They're curating cultural artifacts. When they acquire something like a 1958 D double-die Lincoln cent, they're not purchasing metal. They're securing a tangible piece of America's narrative, a story they can pass on, along with the lessons of patience, curiosity, and vision. And yet, for all the glory and prestige that surrounds these rarities, there's a subtle irony. The original owner may have never known what they had. Maybe it sat in a coin jar for decades, its value unrecognized. Maybe it was spent at a grocery store in 1963, exchanged for bubble gum or gasoline. That's the haunting beauty of coin collecting. It's a reminder that value isn't always visible. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, waiting for the right eyes to notice. So here's a thought to carry with you. Every coin tells a story, but only a few whisper secrets. The 1958 D Lincoln 1-cent coin is one of those whispers, a voice from the past, reminding us that perfection is not always flawless. Sometimes it's the mistakes that become masterpieces, and as you examine your own collection or even your next handful of change, remember, the next great discovery might not belong to history books yet. It might belong to you. Because the treasure we seek isn't just in the metal we hold. It's in the curiosity that drives us to look closer, to learn, to preserve, and to dream. Somewhere out there, another 1958 D double-die cent could still be waiting, tucked inside an old envelope, hidden in a coffee can, forgotten by time but not by fate. And if you're one of the few who finds it, you won't just be holding a coin worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. You'll be holding the heartbeat of American history itself. In the end, the story of the 1958 D Lincoln 1-cent coin isn't just about luck or money. It's about awareness, about seeing beauty in imperfection and potential in the overlooked. It's about realizing that even the smallest artifact can carry the power to outlast generations, to bridge the gap between past and future, to turn the ordinary into the extraordinary. So keep your eyes sharp, keep your curiosity alive, and never underestimate the stories your coins are waiting to tell. Because sometimes, the tiniest coin can hold the greatest fortune.